The hat's still off. I'm not spinning my tail now. I'm talking about the tail I'm spinning and how I should go about the spinning. This is a gloss. This is gloss number 9, I believe. And I think I'm almost certain there's going to have to be another gloss for me to share with you the thoughts I've got about the future of my tail. Uh, and it's about the Great Awakening. How do I get that across to you, listener, right now? That's easy, I'll just tell you. But how do I get it across to the listeners of my tale, of the tale itself? I'll deal with that now. I've got 2 ways. The one way I plan is to simply, as narrator, tell it, explain it, while the characters are sleeping. I'll frame it like that. But another thing to keep in mind is the narrator is telling this story not in 2026, which is where I'm talking right now, or when I'm talking right now, but he's telling it in 2031. It's 5 years into the Great Awakening. That's the narrator speaking. Now, the characters have lived through the Great Awakening. All of the characters have. But anyway, I'll explain it basically for the sake of somebody who hasn't awakened yet at that point, who has managed somehow to sleep through those 5 years, or for somebody in the future, 50 years from now, that hasn't studied his history or his or her history, and doesn't realize how much everything changed during those 5 years. I think I can do that. And the other way I'm going to use is I'm going to have the character. Now this is Heidi's father. His name is George Scott Navsker. And I said his name Elanter at one point. That was wrong. His last name is Navsker. That was Heidi's maiden name. He, unlike Janny, Peter's father, he was not trained as an engineer in technology. He was trained as a lawyer. That's his sort of natural way. And he's going to find a perfect match in the guide of the 4 guides, 2 young women and 2 older men. Of those 4 guides, one of them is going to be a great match for Janny, and that's Raph, because he's ready to explain all the technology that Janny is fascinated by, the water wheel and other things. The other one, nicknamed Prof, he's going to be a perfect match for Scott, because he's more politically minded, the politics of the town and the history of the town. And that's kind of where Scott is. And once they have their conversations, I may have them have their conversations without the listener, and then have the listener hear about their conversations as they recount them to Heidi and Peter. I don't know, that's getting all pretty complicated. It all is pretty complicated. So that's how I'm going to go about doing it. And another thing I wanted to say is, it would be one thing. This is a utopia, admittedly so. I'm telling a utopia. And, utopias are, by definition, imagined better worlds. A dystopia is imagined worse world. This is a utopia. And at this point, after 13 chapters, I could say part 1 of maybe 7 is finished. Things are pretty happy. They seem pretty happy, except I've said there's that cloud kind of hanging over Heidi. Embarrassment, the embarrassment of riches and stuff like that. So, what about the Great Change, or the Great Awakening? If I had to single a single thing out, I would say it was the price of oil. It was the effect that fossil fuels has had for the last 100 years on the globe. but in more particular, uh, Roaring Spring. I don't mind talking about Roaring Spring now to some extent because remember, I'm basing this on the town of Roaring Spring. Uh, the effect it has had been continuous and it's been enormous, but people have slept through it. Think of it, if you want to, as global warming or climate change. People would hear stuff about, oh yeah, it's there, but they didn't wake up until 2026. Then they woke up, not bang like that, and everybody's like a alarm went on. Not that, it wasn't quite that dramatic, but it couldn't be avoided anymore. You couldn't go along saying, oh, it's a hoax, it's silly. The sea will come up a half inch in 500 years, who cares? Stuff like that. You couldn't do that anymore. You had to accept it. And once they wake up and they see to what an extent fossil fuels, I'll just call it fossil fuels, has changed the culture, the planet, the world, the infrastructures, the economies, then they know they're in trouble. And as I say, some of them wake up at different speeds. But that's one of the things. Now, with that great awakening, some other things that are dealt with, that I'll deal with, is people leave cities, de-urbanization, re-ruralification, I think it's called. People realize, sometimes it's explained to them, because people also begin to listen to science. They've just, science go along like, oh, but now they're awake and they realize they need to listen to science. And science explains to them that cities are a huge cause of the problem and they can't be sustained. And people need to leave. I can throw data centers in, artificial intelligence into this, because the loss of jobs because of artificial intelligence isn't guys that change fan belts or unplug toilets. It's guys and women, people who sit at desks and computer screens, and there's a vast loss of those jobs, and of course they can be in the city. I don't necessarily want to argue this out because it's going to be there. I'm going to put it there. Now, that leaving of the cities is led by the homeless. The homeless, they've probably already at this point begun to realize they've got to leave the cities. As these you look up homeless stories on the news, and it's all about this city, that city, that city, that city, that. It's all about cities, and the cities, they don't really have an answer. And Trump, for example, he wants them gone, out of sight, out of mind. But where do they go? That's the lead. But basically, people start to leave the cities. Now, Earth's Drink, I'll go back to fiction. Earth's Drink is going to be living in that surroundings, in that environment of people outside of Earth's Drink are on the move. And, you know, Earth's Drink is going to be, for a while, in a lovely position because it's just got such beauty. The tourists come there, there's the inflow of money. But I've got to deal with that. I'm not willing, I guess I could be able to just let Earth's Drink be a utopia where everything happy and all that. But no, there's conflict. I'm not going to let it spoil my story, but it's going to be there, and I do need to explain it. I think, one other thing, politically, the divide, politically, everybody talks about it, Democrats versus Republicans, and it's so divided and, racist, all that. Well, that political divide, it's not as if the Democrats win or the Republicans win. There's something, they're kind of going against each other like this. There's something that kind of comes down like this across both parties. And that's a division between centralists and decentralists. The centralists tend to still go along with the idea that you've got to solve these problems at a federal level, big government, big businesses, super rich people. Those are the centralists. And the decentralists are the ones that say, no, they can't. They've made the problem and contributed to it. You have to decentralize things. It affects fashion, and I'll explain as dramatically. It affects fashion. The great change. It affects infrastructure because of the price of diesel fuel. You know, when I talk about fossil fuels, diesel fuel and gasoline, if you want, but diesel fuel is a really big one. That and the cost of nitrogen fertilizer, shipping and nitrogen fertilizer just makes farmers and the food supply staggered. And the result of that, the decentralists would say, well, you need to have people back out there on the farms where you can, where the food is, and where the work needs to be done, and the big machines don't apply anymore. Well, this is rather political, and I still have one other thing I want to deal with in this gloss, but then I'll get back to my story. Bye for now.